In 1994, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin co-wrote and directed the movie Stargate. The movie follows two protagonists, Dr. Daniel Jackson and Colonel Jack O'Neill, as they use the titular Stargate to travel to another planet, Abydos, where they find people worshipping an alien who has set himself up as the Egyptian god Ra, who uses those people's belief in him to enslave them. And Jack and Daniel help free the people of Abydos and kill Ra. It was a decent hit that was turned into a very successful TV show, Stargate SG-1. This would lead to two different spin-offs, Stargate Atlantis, as well as Stargate Universe. Then there was also a spin-off not made by the creators of these shows, Stargate Infinity. I haven't seen it, but I seriously doubt this was worth the $30 I spent on this complete series. But all of this is to say, Stargate is a now niche but once very popular sci-fi franchise that started in the mid-90s and ended up lasting until 2011. After that, the show was dead. But then in 2017, a Stargate panel was held at San Diego Comicon, and they had some exciting announcements.
And one of the things you've always been saying is you really want Stargate to have more of a presence. My pleasure to announce that in fall of this year, we're going to be launching Stargate Command.
Strangely, the best video explanation I could find for this was a fan-made video that essentially just summarized what was on the website at the time.
Stargate Command lets you stream every single piece of Stargate content. So that's the 3 series plus the 3 movies. On the free side of things, Stargate Command becomes more of a fan hub. They will post updates, fan events, and other related content.
So essentially, it's a combination social media page and a streaming service, where the quirk is that it's only about Stargate. Also, if you signed up in time, you got a Stargate Command Founders Patch. But that was not all this panel had to give us. They introduced everyone to something exciting.
That I'm so excited to tell you that we're making a new show. The show's name is Stargate Origins, and I want to bring...
They then go on to explain that the show will be about Catherine Langford, whose dad found the Stargate, and she helped recruit Daniel and led the team making discoveries about the Stargate before Daniel was able to figure out how to open the gate. The new show would be telling a story that taking place between the discovery of the gate and the rest of the original movie. The main takeaway from this panel was this franchise was no longer dead. But then, right at the end, someone in the audience asked a question.
How are they going to watch it, and how long are these episodes?
So, the episodes are going to be, in roughly 10 minutes each, and there will be 10 of them to start.
Yeah, that started to worry some people. Understandably so. I don't think anyone knew what this show was going to be, but I will say, speaking for myself at the time, I, yes, was trepidatious, but I was mostly excited to be seeing newly made Stargate. By the time I got to this show, it had just ended. It was like 2012 or something, and I ended up watching most of Stargate SG-1 in college. Yes, I was that cool. I spent my Friday nights in my dorm room watching people on foreign planets that were definitely not Canadian forests. I loved it. But just over 6 months after that panel, Stargate Origins began airing. It was not well received. So, the best way to talk about this is to give a quick-ish... It's not going to be quick. The idea that I'm calling this a quick recap is hilarious. But we're going to give a quick-ish recap of the show, and then we'll talk about a few problems one by one. So, let's start. We start with the same sequence that opened the original 1994 movie before it transitions to new footage. Fun fact, when you signed up for Stargate Command, you got the script for the first episode. Here it is. So I can say with 100% certainty that this script is shameless about the fact it literally says at the start, let me get to it. Okay, so there's the cover page, there's a letter from the executive in charge of production, and here we are, page 1. Exterior, the Great Pyramids, day. The fantastic establishing shot pulled from the 1994 film. Black screen title card, Giza, Egypt, 1928. Yeah, they really said that. And published it. And then gave it out as a bonus to people for paying for it. The opening sequence of the show is really frustrating. Because everyone who's seeing this show, meaning fans of Stargate, are going to know you're just reusing footage. And if on the off chance this is someone's introduction to Stargate, the production value is going to differ so widely from this sequence to the rest of the show. Like, literally, it transitions from a shot that was done on film with a budget to a digital shot on a shoestring budget. I mean, sure, it does say 10 years later, so you can maybe cover up the film digital thing, but the budget issues are much harder to do. This whole thing's just really weird. After the transition to new footage, we get Catherine entering the frame in a way that still bugs me all these years later for some reason, and then we see her talking with James Beal, her romantic interest in the series. Her father, Paul Langford, then enters the scene from nowhere, really. They all then go to dinner, and we cut to afterwards, where Paul and Catherine have a fight about something. I really can't tell what it's about, because it's like he's joking with her that she doesn't have to leave on his account, but then she says she is planning on leaving, and this upsets him. It's like, is she leaving or not? Who's upset? Like, it doesn't make sense. And this, it's how it is in the script. I checked. Anyway, they then separate right before some Nazis show up. This is genuinely as sudden and nonsensical as I'm making it sound. And that comes straight from the script. The Nazis then have way too much information. Like, the whole point of the opening sequence, or not the opening sequence, but the beginning of the 1994 movie, is Daniel Jackson figuring out how the Stargate works. And at this point, like, it has taken, like, years for everyone to get to this point, and even him, it takes weeks of work to figure it out. And here, the Nazis just come in with maps and a magical book that contains all of the answers. Then the episode ends with a spin. That spin is so stupid. I loathed it back in 2018, and I still really don't like it. And again, based on the script, I can say this isn't a problem from the script. The script literally just says end of episode. And if you look at the promotional material, you can see they actually got a camera that spins in order to do this. This wasn't a decision made in the editing room. They chose to do this. And again, it still bugs me. I just really don't like this decision. I also feel like I should point out, this isn't an episode. Not really. Technically, yes. This is the end of the first episode. You can even check on IMDb. This is the first episode. But this is not a complete story. This is a fragment of a story. Like, even in two-parters that SG-1 had, I felt more story in an episode. This whole thing is barely an inciting incident. It really feels like the entire thing, like the entire show as a whole, can't decide if it wants to be a show or a movie. As in, the entire plot, like, it's a singular plot throughout the whole thing, and it takes the entire 10 episodes for it to happen. So, it's kind of structured like a movie, kind of like episodes. We'll get more into this later, but it's just really weird. The whole thing's just weird. Then, in the next episode, we see the Nazis hook up power to the gate and activate it using a car. And, man, I love when it activates that you see the second kawoosh. Like, SG-1 never did that, which I get. Like, when you have a budget, you do have to choose where to put it, and the second Kwoosh is not where to put it. I honestly am amazed this chose to put that in, but I do appreciate it. It's nice. After a few conversations, the Nazis take Paul, and they all go through the gate. But before the Nazi leaves, we get a bit of ADR where the lead Nazi, Baruka, leaves behind his magical book that has all the answers.
My notes, if we fail to come back on schedule.
So hey, we've all been in this situation, right? I mean, you watch a piece of media, you let a piece of it just get under your skin and annoy you in all these little ways for a while, to the point that you put it in your script, you write it, you edit that script to the point you have at least 6 copies of it, but as you go through and edit it, change it, and make it a little bit better, and then you film it, and then the next day you're editing the video, and you realize, oh, I was wrong. Just me? Yeah, I'm sure. And this is definitely only done so that Catherine can get the book later. And pretty much as soon as they leave, Catherine knocks out the guard left behind to guard her, and goes to get her boyfriend Beal and his friend Wasif.
Relax, I'm American.
They then activate the gate after stealing the book, and go through, and believe it or not, I've actually described 2 episodes. That's the end of episode 3. It's at this point, really kind of in episode 3, I kind of glossed over this, but it's really at this point that the entire story splits into 2 plot threads. One following Catherine, and one following her father, Paul. Her dad's entire story, until he meets up with her again at the end of episode 10, is just they arrive on Abydos, the planet for the first movie. They come across a Goa'uld named Auset and her baby, and a guard who for some reason is not a Jaffa as seen in SG-1, but instead also a Goa'uld for some reason. And then there's their eyes. We will get to that later. Anyway, she then kills one of the Nazis. Oh no. Anyway, they are then sent to a dark, rubble-filled room. Now, you might be wondering, where does this room fit within the structure of the building? And the show's answer is, shut up. They then negotiate with Auset to turn over slaves to her in exchange for power, which she provides in the form of the element that makes up Stargate technology, Naquadah. He is very happy with this version of power.
This is all she offers?
You sound disappointed.
A precious gift of a rock?
No, really, he does come around to like it. We'll get into it later. But that's their entire story, up until Catherine meets up with them in episode 10. Again, they're separated for the entire show. And it's just 2 plot threads that have to negotiate for time in this incredibly limiting format. Back with Catherine and Beal and Wasif, they also arrive and find Kasuf from the first movie as a young man. And then he takes them to a tent village where we get a bad retread of the scene where Daniel Jackson accidentally shows the Eye of Ra necklace, which, while in the movie that felt like a genuine accident, like, yes, it's scripted technically, but it really did feel like it was an accident that it came out. In this, it feels constructed. You know, kind of like just, oh no, I have this necklace, it's so powerful. Yeah, it's not quite that bad. I'm overdoing it a bit, but it's pretty bad. Anyway, after that, they're all have a feast thrown in their honor, and then Catherine gets high. They then see Paul and the Nazis with Auset in the village. For some reason. We'll talk about it later. Which leads to Catherine rallying everyone against Auset. Again, we'll talk about how later. The momentum of going from rallying everyone to go against Auset is cut by an episode break where Catherine and Kasuf go to see if they can find the coordinates to get them back home. That journey is then interrupted by a scene that I'm sure doesn't have a full section of the video later and an interesting story. It's definitely not the best scene in the entire thing that I'm just breezing past here. Catherine and Kasuf then go and find the panel that Daniel found in the movie, which contains the address to get back to Earth, but whereas Daniel's was destroyed at the bottom symbol, here it's completely intact. In order to prevent Baruka from using it, she destroys the last symbol, leaving it how Daniel found it. Back at the temple, the Nazis and Auset are no longer getting along for some reason. I really don't care to watch the show again to see if I can remember it. It doesn't really matter. We then have, Catherine and everyone arrive and a battle ensues, and the aftermath of that is Auset wipes Paul and Catherine's memories of ever being on Abydos, or even going through the gate, and implants thoughts to set up the first movie, by hypnotizing Catherine. She then also hypnotizes Kasuf to become the leader of the other village that exists from the movie for reasons. We'll get back to Catherine's later. For Kasuf, I really just... Why was hypnosis needed for that? Like that, him being the leader of the village did not need explanation. Just... why? Back on Earth, we then get a absolutely crazy scene where the American and British governments have absolutely no questions to Catherine or Paul about where Beal is, since he died on Abydos. Sorry, I skipped that. Or the dead and missing Nazis, which shouldn't matter, but I guess technically in the time of Nazis it would matter more. But also, no one questions their missing memories. Also, why are the American agent's gloves like that when she looks at the necklace? It's almost like they're recreating the original scene from the original movie that was seen at the beginning of the thing, because they got the original actor who played Catherine for a pointless cameo. We then get an honestly really nice version of the theme song as Catherine walks out of frame, mercifully ending this miserable series. Okay, this has a lot of problems, some of which I've talked about already, some of which I've implied we're going to talk about more later, some of which I haven't even hinted at yet, but we're just going to go through them one by one in really just kind of an order that kind of makes sense to talk about. So, bad writing. There are scenes that exist for plot reasons and no other reasons. Here's the thing. Every story, like be it movie, TV show, or book, have a thing where people make decisions so that the plot can happen. That's just how writing works. But the thing is, the characters' personalities are usually shaped to facilitate that fact. But here, I'm constantly seeing all of those writing strings. I don't feel like the characters were well shaped to the story. Also, the story wasn't well shaped to the characters. And you just see the writing happening. Usually when you're watching something, you don't see the writing, you just see the story. As an example, there's a scene where the Nazis and Auset go to the tent village, and there's no reason for this. The deal they had was for giving slaves in exchange for Naquadah, and it has nothing to do with the people in the village. Like, if you're handing over slaves in exchange for power, do you honestly care about the facilities that the slaves are living in? Really? The only reason that any of them go to this is so that they can have a stupid battle happen where Auset fails to save one of the villagers' lives in order to give Catherine the opportunity to motivate everyone to turn against Auset, which makes her look stupid. Now, I know I said at the end she sets up Ra's downfall by planting thoughts in Catherine's head, but this scene is genuinely the only setup for that entire sequence and aspect of anything Auset has going for her. And there is no setup for this scene. This entire thing just doesn't make sense as a sequence of events, outside of, like I said, it needing to exist in order to force the ending to happen. Another writing problem that happens is coming from having two separate plot threads going throughout the story. It's partly a timing logistics. When you only have 10-minute episodes, you don't really have the room to have parallel stories. In his Gateworld interview, Mark Ilvidson, one of the co-writers for this, pointed out that it became harder just because 2 different people needed to learn the language that the people of Abydos speak. And that's difficult just logistically speaking. Then, of course, there's the mind wipe.
I think some of that was either done on set, or it may have even been done in post.
Like ADR, like adding the dialogue, so it wasn't shot.
Because if I remember right, I think when that's talked about, it's in. I think those are lines of Ossette's, and I think
yes, yeah.
I can't remember if she's on camera when she says them or not. That was not in the original final script.
I genuinely didn't even notice that sequence was ADR'd. Like, the entire thing exists in kind of a dream world scenario from the editing perspective that it works as a memory implantation sequence well enough that, like, it being ADR'd in a post hoc decision, apparently, it works, it makes sense. But this whole thing is actually a big enough problem. I'm gonna bring it up a couple times from a few different angles. No consequences. Ultimately, it's the conceit of this story that doesn't work. Catherine going through the gate before the main plot of the movie is going to cause them to have to do a memory wipe of some kind, if they want to maintain continuity, which the Comicon panel they did said they wanted to do. This goes further. The conceit of the story doesn't just mean that your main character can't grow, it also means that the entire story can't have any consequences. As a result, the entire thing feels pointless, because they have decided to tell a prequel that, by definition, is going to interfere with the plot of the original movie. But the entire thing can't be allowed to interfere with the plot of the original movie. They could have told a story about Catherine getting the original Stargate program set up, but they didn't, because presumably they wanted gate travel. I don't know why this was chosen. That is pure speculation on my part, but as a result we have the dumb memory wipe. Then, weirdly, there's also problems of characters that don't have their memories wiped, when they really should. Ra shows up at the end to destroy all the sets from this story, since they weren't there for the movie, so we gotta destroy them. And Ra learns that people from Earth reopened the gate. And in the movie, the fact that the people from Earth reopened the gate told him, yeah, we gotta stop this crap from continuing. But in here, he does nothing for the intervening years to try and prevent the events from the movie from happening. And I'll remind you again, in that movie, he died. It just makes him look stupid. The Staff of Horus. I skipped over this, really, in the recap kind of hinted at it, but before Catherine shows her necklace, one of the villagers stabs and nearly kills Wasif, Beal's friend. Afterwards, they bring out a magic stick called the Staff of Horus to heal him. I hate this for several reasons. One, that's not how you heal in Stargate. Like, it's a sarcophagus that heals, not a magical stick. And, like, also, it's just poorly edited. Like, the glowing effect is just, ugh. And by the way, the Staff of Horus, well, actually, before I get to that, like, the effect of Wasif getting stabbed genuinely was excellent. Like, it's good enough. I don't think I can get away with showing footage of it, but it's really well done. Like, one of the highlights of this whole thing, if I'm being honest. But the Staff of Horus, like, that sequence I told you about that had no reason to exist other than causing the downfall of Auset, where Baruka, the Nazi, sends one of his guys to fight one of the villagers for, I don't know, proving who's best for no reason. When one of the villagers dies, everyone's like, oh, get the Staff of Horus to Auset and she can heal him. And she instead destroys the Staff of Horus for no reason. And, like, she cries like she's upset, but again, her entire motivations in this make no sense. It's dumb. I'm running out of ways to call this dumb here. I can't say stupid every time. Now, on to the Nazis. How do they know everything? At the start to the story, it's implied it was Paul's partner who quit at the beginning of the story by letter. It was so non-essential that I just skipped it. But who gave them the information on what symbols to use to activate the gate? Again, I cannot stress this enough. The entire point of the beginning of the movie was Daniel figuring out what the last symbol was. Just who gave them this information? In his interview, the writer even said that an earlier version of the script played out differently.
It was different is that when Langford interrupts them, the telegram, he doesn't say that his partner has disappeared. He said his partner's coming back. And then the next scene was Catherine and Langford arguing about the partner came back with a bunch of Nazis. And I missed losing that scene.
But I guess they cut it because lose a character, which you desperately needed to. But even if that version was still present, it doesn't explain how the Nazis knew exactly what the Stargate is, despite having never seen it. But Langford, who has been with it for a decade at this point, they say that a few times, and he does not know. And all that the ex-partner, who was either the source for the Nazis or just happened to be around it, he was the only one who could have given them any more information, was he knew what Paul knew. There was nothing why? How do they know this stuff? But beyond that, they're just weird. When Baruka says he understands the possibility of the Naquita that Auset gives him, he automatically assumes that he personally will be the ruler of the world, and also a god.
You're a monster.
No, my friend. I am a god.
And this would be threatening in some way, I guess, if the entire premise of this story didn't automatically tell you that this entire plan is going to fail. But he just looks badly written when he's supposed to be crazy and filled with his own ego. But I cannot stress enough, the god thing just comes out of nowhere. Eyes. In the original movie, one of the things that works really, really well is Rob being seen to have glowing eyes. SG-1 also had this, but slightly differently, for the Goa'ulds. I bring this up because it's supposed to just be a brief glow. Auset and the other Goa'ulds in this have permanently yellow eyes. All I can think is that she looks like a Sith from Star Wars. I'm sure it was just too expensive.
Yes, they kept the voice, and doing the voice, that's cheap. We all know that. But doing the eye thing? It's just too expensive. I couldn't even do it because I can only use free tools to do it.
Okay, now for a larger topic. Relationships. There are 2 romantic relationships in this show. Let's talk about them one by one. First one, Beal and Catherine. They have no chemistry. In the first scene, she clearly does not want to kiss him, and that's just funny to me. She does kiss him a few times later in the show, but it's genuinely really weird for one of the first scenes in the entire season, and you couldn't get a better take, presumably, where she actually looks like she wants to kiss her romantic interest. But then there's a scene where they get knocked on top of each other, and Beal accidentally touches her boobs. It's not played out like a boyfriend accidentally doing that, and yes, they established they've been dating for a few months. Here, it's more like a complete stranger did it. I guess maybe they were trying to play it like it was in the past and where you didn't do those kinds of things beforehand, but I don't know. It just... These two do not look like people who have been dating for a while. Then, in a really weird scene, Beal tries to flirt with Catherine by saying,
I found this. It's dark and beautiful, like you.
Those are not adjectives I would use to describe Catherine. Beautiful? Yes, absolutely. Dark? No, she's a positive if realistic person, mostly. Yeah, there's just not much to say about this. It's just, like, it's weird. Their whole relationship is just so odd. And let's get to our second romantic relationship, Wasif and some guy. I would say who it is that Wasif gets with, but I do not know his name. The story makes no effort to have me get to know them or understand why they're in a relationship. The only thing that they have in common is the guy is the person who stabbed Wasif and nearly killed him. They just basically hold hands a couple times and kiss at the end, but that's it. There's nothing else to this relationship for me to get behind. And if you're going to tell a story where two people get together in the middle of it, you have to put some effort towards it. Stabbing someone and then just randomly deciding to hold their hand, like, it's not much. Like, I think ultimately this just comes back to, again, the story does not have the room to breathe. It doesn't have anything to put towards this. But I will say, having gay people when you haven't had any in the show's 20-year history, that's a good choice. Good decision to try and include representation when you haven't before. I just genuinely wish this was done better. Like, I should know who the other guy's name is. And these characters should be developed to where their ending actually makes you feel something. Because ultimately, their ending is just not that well done. If they had actually bothered to give some time to show their relationship as a thing and make you actually care about them, like, Beal and Catherine, like, are kind of not well done, but the fact that they entered a relationship before the show does a lot of heavy lifting. This is having to establish a relationship in the middle and then make it tragic. But because they didn't really set up the relationship well, the ending just doesn't work. Their ending is just, they get hypnotized and become Horus and Anubis, two of Ra's guards that you see in the movie, and the whole thing's just not well done. It does not get any time to breathe. You see just enough to technically establish the events. If they had actually bothered to give time to show their relationship or anything about why they could care about them, the whole thing could be tragic, but essentially what ends up happening is you just added gay people to just kill them off. Tone. SG-1 had an excellent tone. It's something that I wish more shows had today, and the director explained the tone really well.
What people like about Stargate is combining this historical tone with sci-fi, and also that it still can have a sense of humor without being too serious.
Yes, it exists in some degree of silliness, but the actors and everyone working on this knows how to take it just seriously enough. They take it serious enough that the events feel real, but not so serious that the whole thing becomes very boring. Now, Origins tries, but it fails in tone. There are some moments that do, yes, work.
Why ever are you sneaking around so late at night?
I was hoping to brush up on my German.
And sometimes the actors are just funny.
Anyway.
There were so many times that I can't even remember of people. I mean, I think Bonnie Way, when when Dan Rashid did his, he's like, oh, Bonnie Way. That's totally him. That's absolutely the brilliance of Dan Rashid and his sort of comedic timing.
But then we also get jokes like this that just go on for too long.
No, wait. Come over here. Okay, it's your best side.
This side?
But then there's also entirely tonally off slapstick comedy, like this post-credit scene and this one Family Guy-style cutaway joke.
Heinrich knows.
Ja.
Oh, du Liebe.
Then there's bad sets. The sets they're in feel tiny. In fact, they're so small that honestly, it genuinely feels like the characters should be running into each other more. Like, if you pay attention at the beginning, Catherine and Paul should be meeting up because they're in the same room.
Set is incredible.
No, it's not. Also, I feel like the temple set just got its last coat of paint right before the camera started rolling. It looks so bad. Music. It really says something that the trailer for the show features better music than the show has. As a comparison point, let's talk about the scene that was reused from the movie, because in the show, it was rescored, and that rescore stripped a lot of the energy that the music gave that scene. The problems with music in this are numerous. I feel like the orchestra used here is half the size of the orchestra used for the movie and the SG-1 show, but the music is pretty much just absent most of the time. And the thing that drives me nuts about that is music is a huge part of Stargate's identity. It's incredibly distinctive and memorable, but this show seems to fall under the modern ethos of music is not realistic, so don't have very loud or distinctive music, even though music is a huge piece of movies and TV shows. But then, this weird aversion to music really stands out to me in the theme song for the show. Now, I do understand in the modern age, where more commercials are part of broadcasting, you can't have full 2-minute theme songs anymore. I genuinely get that. But so, the theme song for this show, being just one of the main motifs of Stargate, makes sense. The problem is, they don't use the full motif. It's missing like 2 notes. And it really annoys me. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the major problems with the season, let's talk about the title. Stargate Origins Catherine. From that title, we can be assured that this exists to be an origin story for Catherine Langford. So, let's talk about Catherine, specifically as a character. As shown in Origins, she is incredibly static as a character. She does not grow or change, and while yes, the ending with the mind wipe does make it to where any growth she had would be destroyed, definitionally. If you're going to do that, there should still be something to the story. Something that's like a defining moment for her that shows you who she is as a person and is a big moment that shows who this person is and why you should care about them. But within this story, there isn't really any moment that makes me go, hey, I learned something about Catherine. There isn't even really anything that comes as close to the characterization she got in the SG-1 episode, The Torment of Tantalus. And part of that is because this story does not leave much room for Catherine in her own origin story, because the story has chosen to have too many characters and have 2 plot threads which each need their own screen time, and when you throw in the fact that this show has 10-minute episodes, that just restricts the amount of time she is on screen at any one time. Even when you consider the entire season collectively, she's just lost within her own story, which is insane when you consider that this is supposed to be her origin story. Okay, but there is another angle to talk about this from, so let's go back to that Comicon panel and play another clip from it, because it serves as a great introduction to a wider topic in movies and TV shows.
I've noticed that we picked a female director, and it's because she's an awesome director, but it's also because I think women should tell stories about powerful, awesome women.
Now, I recognize I am definitely the perfect person to talk about this, but this is a topic worth discussing. Now, when someone says that they're writing a character as a strong female character, that is, in essence, generally a good thing, but at times the way it's executed can be a overcorrection. What do I mean by this? Well, if you look at lots of movies and TV shows throughout history, women characters have often existed as plot devices, who exist purely to support the male character. And they themselves have not been characters. They sort of exist to just fill in a stock role of wife, girlfriend, etc. So lots of times when people say that they're going to make a strong female character, by that they mean they're going to overcorrect and they end up making someone who's just either physically strong or generally just displayed as tough in some way. They kind of do that here. Beal says it a few times that she's kind of being bossy, but because the story doesn't really give Catherine a ton to do, it's not the big problem that I'm going to talk about. It is a thing, though. So the thing that I really want to discuss and that I see as sort of a larger problem that this story radiates out of it is, let's talk about what one of the defining characteristics of a strong character is, and that is the choices that the character makes. So let's go back to the original movie. In that, Catherine was a minor supporting character, and she was fairly well defined. She knew the most about the Stargate, she led the investigation into the Stargate, and she even sought out new people who might know things that could help them investigate the Stargate. People like Dr. Daniel Jackson, who is the protagonist of the story. And she even reaches out to the military for funding for the whole thing. And when they decided that they were going to take over and go through the gate, and then Daniel offered to help, she made the decision to give Daniel her good luck charm, the necklace that she had. I view this as a way for her to symbolically go through the gate and, yes, give him a bit of luck, because this is a thing that has helped her through her entire journey of investigating the Stargate. As far as minor supporting characters goes, that's honestly not bad. It's honestly pretty good. Looking at her within the movie, I feel like there is a story about her that exists. Starting from her gathering the scientists to investigate the Stargate, her going to the military for funding, working with them, and then balancing the military stuff with the science stuff. All of that just points to a really interesting character. And watching this, I feel like this is someone whose life we're just glimpsing as the story happens to pass her by. She feels like a person here. So with all of that in mind, let's talk about the mind wipe one last time. Arguably, the mind wipe hurts Catherine's character. Stargate Origins takes any agency that she had in the movie, like her decisions to find someone to go through the gate, and giving Daniel her necklace. The mind wipe and the hypnosis that comes with it makes those not her decisions anymore. She did it because she was literally told to. This weakens her character, by definition. This whole thing seems to fail to understand that a character doing things because she was hypnotized to do it takes her much further from being a character and much closer to being a plot device. Okay, moving on. Remember how I said this whole thing couldn't decide if it was a movie or a TV show? I couldn't find any announcements on why they did this, but they turned the whole thing into a movie and released it.
So say even though it's a feature film, we ran it more like a TV show, since that's like the original cut we have was in shorter form episodes.
Now, you would be reasonable in assuming that the story being one continuous plot with episodes that don't feel like complete episodes, that doing this as a movie would make the whole thing better. But somehow, it actually makes the whole thing worse. The existence of the episode breaks adds a bit of implied time that separates things, and the fact that this was released over the course of 4 weeks adds to that effect. But this movie version removes all of that and makes minor problems like why Paul and Catherine don't see each other in the temple at the beginning so much worse. And also, that scene I told you about where the momentum of, hey, we're gonna go stop Owlset, hey, we need to go find the coordinates now. Like, that transition is even worse in the movie version. Another thing is, because this was meant to be a TV show and not a movie, the movie version has a lot of fade to black scenes where the episode break was originally. Strangely, this TV show, which is structured like a movie, is best viewed as a TV show. It's really weird. Okay, I don't want to just be negative, so let's get to a few positives I do have about this show. 1, we do get an admittedly good and interesting shot where we see Beal's face as he turns the inner ring of the Stargate. It's a legitimately good and interesting shot that I'm genuinely surprised we hadn't seen before. It just is a really good-looking sequence. 2, seeing the Stargate portal go backwards. I know I talked about this earlier, but I really love this bit. This hasn't been done since the movie, and I'm really glad they chose to include it. 3, I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time in the show's history that someone acknowledged that everyone sees stars when they travel through the wormhole.
Did you guys see those? I think they were stars.
Like, it's just great to see that the sequence we see of people traveling through the gate is how they see it, and have someone confirm it. It's nice. 4, when Catherine's getting high and solving the plot, I know I brushed past that earlier, but that's why she got high. Like, the whole point is figuring out Baruka's plan. Like, she gets high and solves it. It's so insane. But I will say, this is one time when the music is actually present and works, but the camera work also really works. Like, it's a great use of a Jaws shot. I do think that the sequence itself is dumb, like, as a concept. Why have your character get high to genuinely solve the plot? But it's well done, at least. 5, a little detail that was completely unnecessary, but I genuinely really love, is at one point when Paul is translating for Baruch, he says,
I can't remember the word for thousand.
Which is a legitimately good translation. Like, there was no reason for that to be in the script. The only reason I can think is that their Egyptian translator couldn't find the word thousand, apparently, but whoever's idea it was, it's a really nice scene. I like it. It conveys his nervousness through the whole thing really well. But the scene I really love is the scene I purposefully skipped over earlier, which is, bar none, the best scene in the entire season, where we just have Catherine talking to Kasuf asking, how can you believe in these gods? Where I come from, our gods don't walk with us. Also, you're enslaved to him. You do understand that. And I love Kasuf's response, where he's like, yes, I'm sure your gods still love you. And I love that. It's such a great scene. It doesn't end up actually changing Kasuf's mind or affect the plot in any way, which I know I've said earlier is bad, but this scene is a genuine human moment of people caring about each other and even understanding that people care, even if you don't really understand what their concern is, which is what Kasuf has in this. He does appreciate Catherine's concern, even if he's like, no, everything's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not convinced that this scene is worth the entire season, but it's good. Now, the description I've just given you is what my comment was on this scene at the beginning. Like, this was my genuine thoughts 8 years ago when the season first came out. And I already, had those thoughts, loved the scene, it's great. But then in preparation for this video, when I was watching all the Gate World interviews, Mercedes Bryce Morgan, her interview, she said some interesting things about the scene. Apparently, she decided late in the game to add that scene to the story. And she didn't go to the producers for approval. Apparently it was like Friday, everyone was gone, and they'd probably just say no anyway. So she went to the scriptwriters and just said, write it.
That's something that wasn't written in the script. And for me, I was like, this is something that's very important to talk about philosophically. Before we shot that, I took the writer aside and I was like, hey, I think this is really, really important for us to have. And if we go through the long process of trying to get it approved, it's probably not going to make it in because it's the weekend. No.
And then they shot it, edited it, and then, and only then, did they present it to the producers, who all kind of had a moment of looking at this and going, what the hell is this?
And so when we showed MGM the cut for the first time, they were like, what is this? We've never heard of this before. And I had to fight the entire time we were in post-production to keep that in there. And so the way I was able to keep that in there is we showed it in a test screening to Stargate fans. And when asked what one of their favorite scenes were, they said that scene.
So this scene only happened because they didn't talk to the producers before doing it. And then when they tried to cut it, fans said, no, that's the best scene. The whole thing's just amazing. Like, it was the only good scene in the whole thing. And the whole thing happened just because the director said, we're doing it, dang it! But despite how good that scene is, this entire show and the entire thing was always doomed to failure. Let's talk about how not to revive a dead franchise. When you have a dead franchise, you have to bring it back very carefully. Let's compare this to Doctor Who. In 1989, Doctor Who was cancelled. Afterwards, it was dead for 16 years. But in 2005, it returned. But when it returned very carefully. It resumed episodes with a focus on telling something new. Yes, the old continuity still existed, but the new show was not reliant on the old continuity. In fact, there is very little from that entire first season that referenced the previous era of the show. It was mainly just the existence of the Daleks, which were already the show's most defining villain. Partially as a result of this, the show was extremely successful. It led to over a decade of steady viewership. I was in college before I actually started watching the show, and I mainly did it just because so many people were talking about it. But then, the show's second decade did not go as well. The show started hemorrhaging viewers, and it already needed another reboot. So with barely a break, the guy who brought it back in 2005 returned to the show, and for some reason I can't understand, chose not to use the lessons he himself was using when he brought the show back the first time. This incarnation of the show was filled with lots of references to both the previous era of the show that it was needing rebooting from, but also the original show that ended in '89. And by all accounts, the show is now very close to death again. When reviving a dead franchise, going to the past to tell stories set in the past, you're just going to alienate new viewers. And the only people who will be watching your show are the fans who, by definition of telling a prequel, are going to be predisposed to not like your show because they care about continuity. They were aware of this. They even mentioned it at least once, possibly twice, in that Comicon panel I mentioned. This entire show fails to realize that when reviving a dead franchise, it's not a question. You have to look forward. Anything new that you are choosing to do has to feature as little from the past as possible, because you cannot rely on the current dedicated fan base. You need to bring in new viewers. You need to make the show culturally relevant in order for it to continue. Stargate Origins was not designed for new viewers. It was designed for the existing fan base to watch, love, and hopefully get more of it for them. And this failed at every level. Back to that streaming service. It's gone now. They shut it down in October of 2019. This streaming service was ultimately a bad idea. A streaming service based on one franchise. Honestly, the more I think about it, I realize just how insane it is. Like, for context, Star Trek has never had its own dedicated streaming service. Star Trek. And Star Trek had more shows at the time than Stargate ever did. And they have even more shows now. And they're all on a streaming service for Paramount Plus as a whole. I'll also say they did not promote it well. Here is the promotional video Christopher Judge made to get people to go to the show.
Hi, I'm Christopher Judge, and I'm very excited to tell you about the launch of the new Stargate Command, September 20th. Sign up now, go to stargatecommand.co. Okay, what are you waiting for? Go.
The only video I could find on the official YouTube channel actually showing the website was this walkthrough that chose to show weird things.
I'm going to check out the featured story of Stargate Command. These features are special releases that take weeks of research and preparation. You can click on information about your faction, and you can scroll down to see where you rank on the leaderboard.
The fact that the entire video shows not to show you how to watch episodes, which is the primary purpose of a streaming service, but instead chose to show you how to look at articles, how to take quizzes, it's a personality quiz, and earn points for your faction. A thing which I don't see the purpose of if the website still existed, but it's even more pointless now that it doesn't. This whole thing shows they did not know how you get people to go to your streaming service. And for an explanation on how to do that, let's go back to that video I showed earlier of a random fan doing a better job explaining what this website is for.
It's yet to be seen. Also, Hulu hasn't popped up with an expiration notice for any of those Stargate shows. This means that the only difference between the streaming services in terms of shows will be that Stargate Command has the movies included.
Now, I'm a DVD person. Clearly. I love having DVDs of the things I watch, mainly so that I don't have to worry as much about one of the big downsides to streaming services when it comes to TV shows made before streaming services, and that is, they have a tendency to move around. I'm part of many online fan communities devoted to various shows, not just Doctor Who or Stargate, but one of the things that comes up very consistently in there is people going, hey, the show's not on the streaming service I've been using. Does anyone know where it is? And that is the thing. If the people at Stargate wanted to drive people to Stargate Command, they should have forced people to find it. Also, as a quick side note, you can still watch the show. It's not completely gone because the streaming service is. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, understandably. But also, Apple Plus? I don't know why. That's so weird. I don't get why it's there. However, there is hope. About a month after I decided to make this video, Gateworld put out a video with the original showrunners saying that they are making a brand new show. For obvious reasons, they couldn't really say much about it, but what they said was interesting. One of the things that they specifically talked about in the announcement is that it is going to be designed to be accessible to new fans.
And so for us, it's really important to not only have it so that the fans feel like this is my Stargate, this is the Stargate I've been waiting 14 years for, but that a brand new audience can come in without having to have watched 350 episodes.
Part of me thinks that this is a response to Origins, but they don't actually acknowledge Origins in the video at all. They say that the show was ended 14 years earlier, which is completely skipping over Origins, which was 8 years ago. So, was that defined from Origins? Who's to say? I really can't say, but that's just my feeling. But I will say, it's also important to point out, this is coming out on Amazon Prime, and not a bespoke, personalized streaming service. What a novelty! So unfortunately, there's an update to the new show. I want you to guess, just guess what happened. Yeah, you're right. They canceled it. This video was just supposed to be about an 8-year-old show. I have no idea why I chose to talk about the future, because now I'm having to change stuff last minute. Now, I'm filming this the day after it was canceled, so I'll talk about what we know for sure as of now. According to a source who spoke with Variety, Amazon executives were concerned that the new show wouldn't have broad appeal beyond the existing Stargate fanbase. Now, as I said with Origins, that is a legitimate concern that should be considered. The thing that feels weird to me is that in the November video where the original showrunners are talking about this new show, they specifically call that fact out and say that they are working to make it a show where you don't have to have seen the previous 17 seasons of television in order for it to make sense. Now, is it possible or likely in some people's minds that there's more to this going on? I'm sure that there is. But this is so new and breaking that me speculating on that, I don't feel comfortable doing that. So I'm just going to put those facts out and then move on. What I feel like I can say as a Stargate fan is this is incredibly frustrating and I'm upset about this. My fear that I have, though, is that it's very likely that Stargate Origins is going to become the final release in Stargate. At minimum, this is just the way I think Hollywood and franchises is going right now, is that this is probably going to be the last release in the original continuity, because a complete reboot feels like the only other chance this franchise has of continuing at this point, which is incredibly disappointing. I'm really upset that this original continuity is likely to be ending on such a bad note. I'll also say that in my mind, a complete reboot would have its own problems, but this is supposed to be a video about Stargate Origins, so I'm just going to put some of those reasons up on screen. The only positive thing I can say is, for a little bit, I lived on the hope that the original showrunners were going to make another show, and I felt like it was going to be a good one. The hope was great. I wish the show was still happening, though. In the meantime, let's get to my final thoughts on the latest entry in the Stargate franchise. In my researching for this, I found a fan video of someone saying, preemptively in the lead up to Stargate Origins coming out, don't just dislike the series, watch it, because watching it is how we will get more Stargate. And stripped to the bones, that is a true statement. However, I will say, that is entirely the wrong way to think about this. In fact, in his promotional work for Project Hail Mary, Ryan Gosling put it best.
First of all, thank you just for coming to the theater. You know, I think obviously theaters need you, but it's not your job to keep them open. It's our job to make things that make it worth you coming out.
And ultimately, Stargate Origins was not good. Frankly, between the budget issues and the foundational concept, this story was always doomed to failure. But I do live in hope that the other show will be made and that it will be good. Thank you for watching. Something I am sure will be completely obvious to anyone who has ever considered making YouTube videos is that my channel's first video, my reaction to the season finale of Doctor Who, was not my first attempt at making videos. Back when Origins first aired, when I was excited to see that they were making more Stargate, I made a 1-hour video rant about it. Just the show, didn't feature anything about the interviews or any commentary on the streaming service. That was my actual first video I tried to make back in 2018. But YouTube kept flagging it for me using too many clips. And so if you've ever wondered why when watching any of my videos, or if you watch any of my videos after this and wonder why I'm using so few clips, my experience of failing to upload that video at least 5 times is the reason. But yeah, I'm bringing this up to say I've been making videos for an entire year now. I've gotten a lot better at it. I feel like I've gotten much better at writing, filming. I feel like I've finally gotten, like, decent at it. I think I've finally figured out how to do this now. And I just figured when I saw that a slot was coming up for my, what's very close to my 1-year anniversary of making videos, that returning to the first video I ever tried to make was an excellent way for me to celebrate that fact. So I'll just say thank you so much for watching this, and here's to the next year of me making videos. Oh, come on. Oh, man. I get the test footage all ready, I get the table cleaned, and then the computer decides, hey, what do you mean you need to read a script? What? I've never heard of such a thing. Since this is probably going in the bloopers, I've had this on the entire time. Okay, gotta remember that when I actually take it out, it gets twisted a lot in there. So, franchise that only started in the mid-90s, but lasted until 2011. I'm gonna say that again because I don't like how I said 2011. I'm gonna come back to that again later. I do think the entire concept of the scene is dumb, but it's well done. My old enemy. Hi, thanks for watching all the bloopers. Now, I need you to understand, there's one other thing I want to talk about. I literally tried, like, you have no idea how hard I tried to find an earlier spot to fit this in the video, but I need to talk about it, so I'm just tacking it on here at the end. But one of the things you got with your Stargate Origin, with your Stargate Command subscription, was they sent you this t-shirt for Stargate Origins, and, like, either they sized it weird or I ordered the wrong size, but I've never been able to wear this. Like, despite everything I've said about the show, like, I love the fact that this shirt exists and that I have it and that I've kept it all these years. And, like, if this thing had a chance of fitting on me, I would have been wearing it for this video. But I just needed to talk about that. Thank you!